Where's the dancing? There it is.
It was almost not on time there.
Camera freeze. Hey, y'all. How are you? Happy Friday. Oh, my gosh. We've got all kinds of people here. It's like Hollywood Squares on my screen. We got Matt, Zach, Andrew, well, of course, Jesse and I. But, gosh, what are we talking about today? The evaluating. Something about MSPs. Oh yeah, they're cyber stack, right? Yeah. Hey, Tim Golden here, founder of Compliance Risk. How are y'all? Back again on another Friday. Really looking forward to bringing in some really interesting people, right? Like I love the name Gradient, right? Because if you look at my logo, it's got gradient, not the same kind of thing, but it's got that like. That gradient fill, right? So, hey, let's see. Matt, are you hanging out with us today?
Oh, I'm just checking on LinkedIn and make sure like this is actually working. But yeah, we're here. And, so this is we talk to a lot of partners about how do you make money off of cybersecurity, and it's usually at the beginning of people's journey, it's always something about like, well, we're secure. Everything we do is secure.
I sell them phishing training.
and but then they get from their customers, well, the customer doesn't want to pay for security, and there's a whole evolution of understanding how to take their practices and processes and all the toolkits and turning them into a revenue space that's it's a tough challenge.
We're actually supposed to make money off this stuff. I mean, come on, really?
I don't have any numbers on average tools, but I've heard people say 30 tools, 50 tools. I ask partners how many tools they're using, and what do you guys hear? Tim, what are the numbers you heard?
Yeah, I mean, we hear that 40 to 50 range, but let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. How many tools does a carpenter have in his van?
Right. Those.
How many tools does a plumber have in his belt?
Right.
So, but I think us here, as we continue to do this stuff, I think it's about finding the optimal way of utilizing the tools in our tool belt to make us efficient and make money and do all that fun stuff, right? And we're going to get into that a little bit about, with Andrew and Zach about how that can work here in a minute. But let's just take a second and think. If I'm a carpenter, and you hear me say this all the time, right? So you compare me to the Amish carpenter, right? Like you give me the table saw, the band saw, the skill saw, all the awesome tools, right? And I will mess up every single birdhouse. You give the Amish carpenter a rock and he'll come back with a Taj Mahal, right? It's all about, at least for me anyways, the right tool for the right job in the right person's hands, right? And as we talk about some of this stuff today, we're going to figure out how these things can all play together nicely, right? Because me, I'm going to use the sander to try to cut the tree down. I might take me a couple of years with 30 grit sandpaper, but I will get through that tree. So
we love tenacity for sure.
Yeah. Tim Golden, Compliance Risk. Matt, who are you? And then we'll keep moving on.
Yeah, Fort Mesa, we help customers own their clients' cybersecurity roadmap with vulnerability management and GRC tooling.
Nice. Jesse, always good to have you back. How's them chickens today?
Yeah, chickens are doing good. I was actually out in the garden on my lunch break, pounding some T-posts in to get the lattice work done. Anyways, so what I do, other than garden, is help MSPs build, repair, and scale their cyber programs for profit.
Awesome. Love it. Andrew, welcome aboard. Enjoy our Friday afternoon with a little bit of banter. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, why you're here.
So Andrew McKeage with Gradient MSP. If you haven't heard of Gradient, I'm sure you'll learn all about us here in the next half hour, 45 or so. I'm with the sales department, so I'm our director of sales over here, but been in the channel for a number of years through multiple different avenues, everywhere from some of the big guys with Enable down to Passportal back in the day, all sorts of good stuff. So
nice.
Excited to be here.
Nice. So you've run the gamut like the rest of them.
Yep.
Awesome. glad to have you here. And hey, we have a new, is that a new face, Zach? Did you get a new face, or are you just a new face here, or did I miss you last week because I was off like getting my daughter married or something?
You know, it's not a new face. I've had it for a few years, but it's relatively new to this space.
Nice, nice. Welcome. And what are you doing at Fort Mason now?
So I'm our director of channel sales. I work with our partners pretty hands-on. Prior to my time with Fort Mesa, I owned a small restaurant franchise. So to all of our MSP partners, I'm able to provide a pretty good perspective on what their customers are going through and what their level of understanding is with the values of their toolkit that they're able to provide. So I work pretty hand in hand with our MSP partners to really drive home something that's going to work for everybody. And it's been a good time so far.
So you can be our go-to recommendation for great food and great apps and probably some good beers on tap, right? Since you have that restaurant background, or
Absolutely. I can probably also help you understand how to connect with people who maybe don't have a technical background or maybe struggle with learning and development. So
What? So Zach, you were.
Go ahead,
I'm
Matt.
going to keep interrupting because you know that's what I do. So if I get this right, Zach,
Sure,
you're going to
please.
help us MSPs. You're going to help us MSPs develop a recipe that we can then bring forward and put it on the menu for MSPs. How's that for Thank you very much. I'll be here all day.
It's a little bit on the nose, Tim. but it, you know, in reality, I mean, Zach, you were working with MSPs when you were doing you know, regional branch management, right? But the reality was that
I hired a number of MSPs as a small business owner. You know, there were elements of my business that, as a small business owner, you know, I have a background in HR and understanding of compliance, but I don't necessarily have that same time to provide to it to make sure that my business is secure, right? My specialty is in people development. My specialty is in operations. My specialty is in team building, right? So those are the things that I applied my my attention to build successful businesses, which is very important to do at all levels of business, whether it's an MSP or a small business. It's important to know.
Well, you know, Chef Ramsay always says it's about teamwork in the kitchen, right? And if not, then beep out of the kitchen, right?
Communication.
Awesome. Well, Zach, happy to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, what was that misspelled thing you were talking about? Oh, yeah, the valuation of the point of diminishing returns. Good. So, hey, thanks everybody for showing up in chat. Keep posing your questions over there. We're going to try to answer them real time. And if I can't, you know, banter some way through an answer, maybe Jesse can actually have a real answer, or even better, I bet Andrew could. So, hey, let's just dive right into what it is that we're talking about today. Andrew, do you want to give us like your little, you know, elevator, you know, 2-minute pitch?
Yeah. So for those who haven't heard of Gradient MSP before, Gradient was founded out of the space. So our founder, Colin Knox, some of you may have heard of him, had his own MSP, grew that to about $4 million. So not a terrible size in a short period there. And obviously, like everyone else, had problems that he faced. So founded his first business out of that called Passportal to deal with password security issues they were having. Passportal then was acquired by SolarWinds, now Enable, and after that, kind of went back to the drawing board, and you know, still having enough connections and a lot of friends in the space, went back to the same problem that he faced with integrations and billing, right? And typically speaking, when we're talking about having your tool stack, most MSPs are going to try and find things that play nice together, right? If you're a ConnectWise shop, you're going to try and stay a little bit in the ConnectWise environment, Kaseya, Datto, on and on. But sometimes you want to shop best in breed. You might have a specific vertical that a tool really fits that you work with, and maybe that doesn't play so nice, right? So we really did want to find a way to truly have that open ecosystem. And Gradient was originally founded as essentially an integration hub. Now, the lowest hanging fruit for us was the billing side of things, right? So how do we find a way to ensure that you are appropriately billing out what you're actually paying for from your vendors? Like Charles mentioned earlier, there is a point of diminishing returns in the number of tools that you can actually keep track of. That has never been truer. Anyone who's been to a show, you are always going to find the newest, shiniest mousetrap, and typically people go home with it and they throw it at their techs and go, perfect, figure it out. And you're going to find some success with that, but ultimately, it's about taking those tools and not just providing a good service. But I'm pretty sure everyone here isn't a volunteer, and at some point, everyone wants to make some money and keep the doors open, and hopefully some profit on top of that. So that's really what Gradient tries to do. Is we help you to understand in a really simple fashion, what am I billing out of my PSA right now? What am I actually invoicing my clients for? What am I consuming from my vendors? Do these numbers match up? Am I paying a ton for shelfware? Am I underbilling my customers? Do I have someone that maybe I offered a proof of concept to 3 months ago and I forgot to bill them? And now we've all of a sudden been just offering this service for free. Not that that's ever happened to anyone, but if you've ever worked in an MSP, I'm sure there's a handful of people behind the camera right now doing one of these. So a number of things that we try to do to help bring some visibility and some clarity into that, while automating it as much as possible as well.
So stay up here for a second. I'm going to ask like a couple of questions, right? What's with the swan behind you?
First off, it's a flamingo. So if you head
over
over
my birds, that's why we have Jesse. Jesse's our resident farmer.
That's good. That's good. So if you head over to our website, or if you go into our actual customer portal, we do have a spokesbird. His name is Phil, the flamingo. So every business in the channel needs to have some degree of a mascot. A flamingo seemed to make sense for us. They're a flock bird. We're all about bringing everyone together. So it worked out really well. And Clippy was already taken. So we got to go with the next best thing.
That's
right?
funny. We were talking about, anyway, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah.
I was just going to, I've been logging into Gradient over and over, and that bird on the login screen, it just like changes my mood.
That's awesome because I'll relate this, right? Because I've been talking about having a mascot and so I went down the whole Zodiac thing, and then I went down the whole
I would love to know your Zodiac.
I went through all of these different things to try to figure out what would be my ideal for compliance risk? What would be my ideal mascot? And then it dawned on me, we are a dog family. We are a boxer dog family. We have had boxers for our entire lives. And I'm like, duh, why didn't I actually think of that to begin with? Because boxers, their traits really align with what we're doing, right? They're respective, they're follow commands really well, they're guard dog, all of these things. I'm like, duh, okay, it's the boxer, right? So I love the fact that you have the flamingo. One more question. Where are you from? Because I'm picking up a little bit of an accent. Do you want me to tell you where I think you're from before you?
I want you to for sure.
I would love a guess. Yeah, go for it.
I think you have some Canadian in you. I hear a little bit of that Canuck in there, right? So, and I can say that because my family's all from Canada, so I think I can relate to that. So, what do you think,
No doubt about it.
Oh yeah, so we're right there, my friend. Right? So yeah,
I like that.
Yeah,
So
no, I'm from
stuff.
Calgary, out in Western Canada here. So
Nice. Yeah,
Alright.
I instantly picked that up. Hey, we're
There you
kin,
go.
right? So I'm on the other side. But anyway, so well, hey, Andrews, we're so glad to have you. We want to learn a little bit more about what the stuff Gradient is. You mentioned the whole idea of integrations and billing, and wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So why don't you just pull us up? Let's see what we have in here for first chat questions.
I got something to say about this one here, which we pulled up a second ago. What I tell my MSP partners, even if they could bill for 30 different tools, the customers don't necessarily want to see a 2-page SKU list, on every bill. And so, as MSPs move towards bundling around the value they're delivering, and the tool sets are a key part of that. I think that the taking the tools and creating keystones, right, in your tool suite, right? If you're pulling out that pipe wrench, right, you're probably plumbing at the moment, right? And And I think that these tools come in packages. And I think if an MSP can track which tools are in which clients, some of those tools are keystones in their bundles, in their service offerings, and they can be bundled together. When you know that they have this tool, okay, there's probably these 4 other tools that are coming into play, and they can all be part of the bundle. So
bundle compliance risk and Fort Mesa and Gradient. Yeah,
I would love that. I would love to ask you a question related to the experience of our MSPs and their clients. So when you're dealing with your clients, what would you say the largest mistake is in terms of like most often, right? Because you help them provide that billing solution. What are you seeing be the most consistent error, right? Because I'm sure there's some low-hanging fruit that everybody is making the mistake on.
I think the biggest thing, and this is obviously a big generalization because there's as many PSAs on the market as you could guess, but every one of them has a slightly different way of bundling, right? And it's very difficult to really dive deep and truly understand the billing part of your PSA because the reality is it's probably one of the least focused parts of that tool. You use it every single day, but you really only do the billing part once a month, right? So when you start to look at it, bundling is a very commonplace. I don't know a lot of MSPs that don't bundle anymore. Mm-hmm. And we can go down a whole rabbit hole on how to build bundles and what's the best way to do that. But I think the biggest pitfall for a lot of MSPs right now is not leveraging that tool as much as they can. When they build a bundle, and I will use the air quotes here, a lot of times people will just put together, gold support service, right? And there's nothing on the back end that shows what services make that up. What vendors are you using to provide that service? Sure. Do your customers need to know? Do they care if you use Datto backup or Cove? It doesn't matter.
Do you mind if I cut you off for a second and interject a question? So what do you think the rub is there? How come they're not going through the necessary process to get the value there? Is it a knowledge-based issue? Is it that they don't have the time? I mean, business owners go through a ton of problems, right? They have a lot on their plates. Yeah. What are you seeing be the most consistent rub? I guess not the right word, but you know what I mean.
No, it's a couple things, right? And I think it's partly when you set up your PSA and you're, whether you're migrating from another tool or this is your first one that you're leveraging, you want to get up and running and out the door as quick as possible. So there's always some shortcuts that are taken. There's always best intentions to go back and fix those things down the road. But at a certain point, everyone can agree the most finite resource in any MSP is time, right? Especially from the business owner. So for you to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to dedicate the next week and go in and fix how my invoices work on the back end. It doesn't necessarily bring a ton of value up front when they start to think about it. But when you really want to break things down and you want to start to analyze your business and where am I going to grow the most, you need to know things like your cost of goods sold. You need to know a lot of different metrics around that can provide that unless you build it out properly on the back end, you're guessing at, right?
Sure. So I'd like to.
So what you're saying is, in order for me to figure out if I'm actually profitable, I guess first I need to make sure that I'm billing appropriately, and then from there, like having an understanding of like cost of goods sold and all that other fun stuff too, right? Well, so
it's an interesting thing because if you ask any of your partners, you talk to any MSP, every one of them can probably tell you within a few weeks how profitable was I last month? Did I make money or did I lose money? Who's my most profitable customer? But do you think any of them have a good glimpse of what's my most profitable service? Sure, I bundle, but maybe I do backup. Maybe I do a security bundle. Maybe I do all these things. I have different tiers within that. Yeah. Which one actually makes me the most money? Because that's a huge metric that everyone should know that sometimes is very difficult to pull out of that data unless it's all built properly or you've got the right steps in place, right? Yeah. But when we talk about scale and let's bring it back to the whole idea of an actual cybersecurity stack. It's very easy to acquire way too many tools. Do you need all of those tools, right? Are you actually just, trying to sand down the tree, or do you have a saw somewhere that you can apply and you're going to have virtually the same outcome at a more profitable result
Well,
And
so
I'd like to interject another question. I
ahead.
apologize, Matt. So, a lot of organizations will go through, yearly evaluations of their process, quarterly evaluations, periodly. When should and what should the cadence be, if there should be a cadence, an organization be evaluating their tools, their proficiency with said tools, and whether or not they should be pursuing additional tools?
I mean, that should be a living document for everyone, right? It's impossible to keep tabs on it every day, but if you're operating as efficiently as possible, and something like Gradient, the whole purpose of our tool is to help you to be able to do this. You're reconciling what you're being billed by your vendors and what you're billing out to every one of your customers on a monthly cadence, right? You don't want to have, again, shelfware. You don't want to end up underbilling customers, all that good stuff. But it's very easy to let that slip, because unless you have tools that all integrate together, then it's a very manual process. And you're literally sitting there. I like to call it the 2x6 method, because you've usually got two monitors, one with your PSA, one with your vendor portals, and then usually a 6-pack beside you where you hate life for about 8 hours, and you try and just make numbers match. And can you do it? Absolutely. But it's very prone to human error. It's not efficient. And, typically you're going to try and tackle the ones that you see as the biggest risk, right? And then some of the other ones may fall by the wayside. So going through and doing that on a monthly basis is the ideal way to do it. Can every business do it, or does every business do it? No. Is it something that's important? I would absolutely say so, because like you said, at that point, that's when you're going to start to uncover, do we really only have one customer who's leveraging this specific tool? And is it something that is necessary, or can we revisit, right? Do we have another tool that's maybe a considerably bigger profit center for us? And can we maybe look at some migrations across our stack? And as licenses come up for renewal, as contracts come up for renewal, how can we start to pivot things so that, hey, we can now go down this other path where we're providing the same service, getting the same outcome, or potentially a better outcome for people, but we're now also more profitable as a business.
So like I don't want to say you're blowing my mind, because you kind of are, but here's the thing, right? So why is McDonald's so because they have bundles, right? They have packages, they have things, but why is the double cheeseburger always in one of those packages, right? Because they've recognized the fact that the double cheeseburger is probably the single cheapest thing to make. And I'm talking about not the double cheeseburger, the 2 individual cheeseburgers and the fry that goes with it. And why is that the most profitable for them? Is I have 2 kids. Each is going to get a burger, right? So when we think about and we apply this concept to our MSP, I'm going to look at my stack. I'm going to use Gradient to help me figure out, oh my gosh, security, vulnerability, awareness, training, some tool, whatever, something in my stack costs me 50 cents and I'm charging $1, but I have millions of people using it, right? And looking at that part of my stack with a tool like Gradient to help figure out that thing I need to push more of.
Yeah.
Is that how I'm understanding this?
You're getting the business intelligence aspect of Gradient that not everyone starts to see right away, because at its core, Gradient's a very simple tool. Our synthesized billing module is a very simple, look, we integrate with your vendors, we integrate with your PSA. We populate your PSA agreement or contract data to show, for cybersecurity, for this particular service, I have this customer paying me for this many licenses. This is my vendor that I'm consuming that from. Do these numbers match? And it's really quick, easy, side by side. Hey, they added 3 licenses in the portal last month. Someone forgot to update the contract. Before we send that out, maybe let's bill them for the right number that we're paying for, right? So now you can one button, you can bulk approve. You want to update 500 contracts in 2 button clicks, you can do that, right? Instead of going through one by one. But the bigger piece to this is starting to really understand, hey, where is my business actually seeing success, right? And that's exactly right. When we start to dig in and we go, I'm pretty sure, because bundling is everyone uses bundling as a very broad term. And I like to say it's the same thing when someone asks, hey, do you guys have an integration? Maybe, but integration's, again, a very broad term. Do you want a billing integration, provisioning? How do you want this to actually work? So, when we talk about bundling, can you build a one-size-fits-all bundle that's a single line item on your invoice? Sure. It's very simple. Customers like it because it's easy to understand. The reason we don't list out all 200 services is no one wants to look at that, and people are going to start to pick these apart, right?
Yeah, and we do that under our MSP too. You get one line item. And there's sort of categorically stuff in there, like, and more importantly, these are the, like, anything that isn't in this description is not covered, right? So that's a Brad Gross, legal, Pete, whatever. But in, like, we have one line item, but I want to know, is my policy governance making more money than my security awareness training? I don't know, right? So,
well, are you leaving yourself open for potential displacement by another MSP? If you have a single line item, do they really know all the services that you're offering, right? You want to find that balance between, I want a simple invoice, but I want to show, because we all know the best problem or the worst problem as an MSP is if everything's working perfectly, you shouldn't hear from your customers all that often. But the inverse to that is if they're not hearing from you, how do they see the value that you're providing behind the scenes, right?
Right,
so
right. And so,
being able
like,
to list that out.
When we do our invoicing, we'll have categories of stuff: backup, email filtering, training. Like, we'll have, like, here's the list of categories, not per line item price, but it's line item of categories of things, and then the price at the bottom. So they can quickly look and be like, oh, we're getting all of that stuff. And they know they're getting that value, that benefit, that stuff. But to tie it back into Gradient, for example, you're going to help me make sure that each of the things in that category that tie to a contract or tie to a tool is being billed appropriately.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it.
So I'm just, as you guys are talking, I'm recalling a situation that I hear about once a week, which is I'm talking to a partner, and the reason they're talking to us is they're reevaluating their business profitability and their business strategy because they were going one direction for a while. And maybe market forces have been pulling at them for a little while. And where they really get motivated is when, all of a sudden I'm in the red this month, right? And that may have been 12 months coming or 3 years coming, right? And all of a sudden, all of that strategy stuff that was a distant, like, nice to have thought, right, becomes, wow, I really need to analyze things. And I'm talking to them while they're having this experience of, okay, I need to go in the direction of more compliance, more security is oftentimes one of the things they realize. But the other thing they're realizing at the same time is, well, I also need to study the profitability of every single account, right? And that's what leads them towards maybe more bundling, maybe more service, maybe less products. They're thinking about all these things, but I'm talking to them during this time, right? And they say, I don't even, I've got 47 customers, and I know that there's these 3 really good accounts, and I know that there's these 3 really annoying accounts I should probably fire, right? But then they've got, the other 40 accounts in the middle, and they don't know which ones are profitable and which ones aren't. And it sounds like having this granular billing data, at the account level, even if it's not being used to drive bundles, can actually drive the overall strategy, right? When you're even trying to decide what services should I be delivering. And that even if you're not billing these things out to the customer, having that granular level of data is pretty critical at that moment where the MSP is looking to really strategize around operational changes. And so that's, it sounds like I got another recommendation on my list for at least once a week.
And it's like funny because you hit the nail on the head. Like, you need to know which one is most profitable and where do we dedicate our time and our focus. But the other side to that is, okay, now we know. Now are we actually delivering that, right? Are we accurately billing? Because the scariest thing for a lot of MSPs is if you don't go through a proper audit process on your invoices on a monthly or quarterly basis, you're just kind of checking off the high risk or the high level ones. If you sit there and ask yourself the question, if your customers went through an audit of your invoices, is that something you'd be comfortable with them doing? And hopefully that's the case. But if that's something that gives you any pause, there's got to be a time where you take a step back and, okay, we need to reevaluate some of the administrative pieces that we're doing here, and where can we add some efficiencies and be a little bit better, right?
So Jesse, what do you have to say about all this stuff?
So I'm just taking this all in and just thinking about all the horror stories that I could talk about.
I'd love to ask you a specific question, Jesse. So when you're consulting MSPs related to billing, what do you most consistently hear as a problem, and how do you help them solve it?
Yeah, I think I think, well, so let me take a step back and talk about
Please, yeah.
some anecdotal experience that I've lived when I was working as a CISO for an MSP for years.
Yeah.
So I have one instance. We were doing, we started our security practice back in 2016 or 2015. So you talk about not security tools not being able to work with the PSA and not being able to work with the MSP ecosystem. That was almost every tool we were using at that point, right? So I literally had an admin at billing time who was doing the stare and compare, looking at the portal for the provider and literally manually typing in number counts on invoices, and it was an all day thing. And she was fantastic at it. I mean, she never missed, but that's a whole person's day that you're 8 hours a week that you're wasting. So there's efficiencies lost there. And then I think secondly, so what I see then, what I talk to my clients about is there's really four things that you should be thinking about when you're pricing out a package or a service, right? You need to think about what does it take to sell it? What does it take to implement it? What does it take to support it? And what does it take to bill for it? And that's what people always forget about. You talk about, this cool new tool, and we go throw it at our techs, and then we realize, oh, shoot, we can't bill for it. And all the ancillary problems that brings into the mix. It poisons the well with the customer if you're continually having billing issues, double billing. Another incident we ran into, we caught, thank goodness we caught it. We had been overbilling a customer for almost a year on something, and it was in the high 5 figures that we had to go back and credit them. And what does that do to your cash flow, right? What do you do at that point?
Yeah.
And
so I have a very similar but different problem. Yeah. I keep trying to reach out to a couple of my clients with, hey, we're supposed to review this every quarter and adjust accordingly. I'm adjusting, but you're unaware. Oh, by the way, I just noticed 60% of your staff, you had a reduction. Oh my gosh, let's have a conversation. So I kind of feel that pain point in my MSP where a client either hires 50 new people or reduces their staff by 50 people. Then we're not informed. We just see more, it's a co-managed. Oh, more things show up or less things disappear. And we're like, what?
Yeah. And the other piece to this too, as part of that is there's a whole, as tech nerds, as I'll loop us all loosely into that category, we have a sentiment. You're welcome, Zach. We have this sentimentality that we attach to products and services and tools. Like we might have this tool that has this perception. We really like it. It's a really great tool, but the client doesn't really want it. And so we're selling it to 2 or 3 of our clients. We're like, oh yeah, this tool is awesome. I always have a great time working on this tool, but we're not looking at the numbers and saying this tool is not profitable. We need to get rid of this service. And this is what again, with my clients, I say, you're selling to 3 clients, get rid of it. It's not profitable for you. And you might lose something, you might lose a client, but what are you saving on the back end? So again, having some really good KPIs and metrics around that is super helpful when you're going through this.
Yeah. We have a couple of tools in our stack that, do what they're supposed to do, which basically, we don't hear, I don't know, I'll pick something out of my butt. We have a tool called Puppy, right? And that Puppy, monitors this thing. And as long as nothing's happening, Puppy never barks, right? And so then I'm looking at it do I care about the puppy that never barks, or I never get anything from that tool telling me that something's going on or not going on?
Yeah.
Is that tool profitable? Do I keep it in my stack? Do I replace it? Is it feature parity? So as I start to think about this in my MSP, I start to think about, like you said, is the tool helpful? Is it filling a gap? Is it profitable at the end of the day? And if I look at the Puppy tool, right, it's probably not profitable, even though it's cute, right?
Well, and it's hard to differentiate because it's easy to look at the hard costs of your business. What am I actually paying for this tool? What am I charging for this tool?
Right.
The soft costs are the trickier one to pin down, right?
Yep.
And it takes some good business practices to be able to do that.
Pause and tell us, who may not know what a soft cost is. Tell us what a soft cost is.
Fair enough. So your soft cost is your time that goes into it. How many hours is someone spending managing it? How, You said it perfectly, Jesse. You got one person who's spending 8 hours of their day reconciling all your different services. How much are you paying that person? They're making $50 an hour. You're sinking $400 a week if they're doing it, on the 1 week into that practice, right? That's your soft cost. That's the stuff that if you can take that,
it's
and you
going
can
out the
reduce
door
it
in
down,
line items that you don't realize you can't attribute to it, but it's going out the door.
And it's efficiencies. And I mean, in this space, we are all suckers for automation, and we want to automate as much as possible.
Yeah, headache is a soft cost.
Headache is, and there's a fine line, I think, that we all need to try and make sure that we walk between too much automation and control of your business, because especially billing, ultimately, that is, what am I charging my customers? Like you said, Jesse, if you're overbilling by 5 figures, that can cost you that customer the second they see it, and there's no conversation you're having that's bringing them back. I've seen an unfortunate number of times where the inverse is true, where someone comes in and they're a new Gradient partner, and they go through and they do their first reconciliation cycle, and their accounting team starts to place bets on how many thousands of dollars under billing are they on each individual customer.
That they've been bleeding that they didn't need to be. That their customers didn't realize that they were getting that back on. Like, it's not like it's a coupon where they come in and they're like, oh man, I got it for cheaper this time around. It's coming out month after month with no communication back that it's less than what it's supposed to be. They think they're paying what was agreed upon, and it's literally it's cancer in the business, and you don't know it's there.
Even worse, your customer probably knows that they're underpaying you, but who's going to call you and tell you to charge them more?
Right.
One way or the other, surely.
Right. If you're underbilling someone, you can't go back 6 months and ask for that lost revenue that you left.
And you shouldn't expect. You almost shouldn't. Well, you can expect, but you might not expect to do that on your own mistake, right?
Exactly.
It's a tough position to stand on for somebody that you're trying to have a good relationship with, to say, hey, look, my error, and now you've got to come out of pocket on cash flow that may or may not be available. We don't know what what the situation is with your clients. And we know how important relationship management is when it comes to your clients.
I think ultimately the biggest thing that is important to keep in mind when it comes to billing is that there is such a thing as too much automation, and ultimately having some degree of checks and balances in place to ensure accuracy is probably more important than automating every single piece that can be.
Another big thing we run into, in that vein of that conversation, at least, and I'll polarize some people with this comment, but I think you should be billing your cyber services and your MSP services separately. Help carve out budget, helps do a range of different things, helps differentiate in the customer's mind. We're not talking about that today, so I'll duck as people virtually throw things at me because they don't agree with me. But all that to say is that it's a lot of MSPs don't have a good grasp on what their profitability of their cyber offering is, and so because they're making money, they think everything's fine, but they are really lacking efficiencies in their cyber business. And they think it's fine because they're still making money. But if you start separating it and you actually look at that, all of a sudden you realize their cyber business is just kind of towing that line of being profitable one month, not profitable the next, and the IT and project business is carrying it a little bit. And how do you fix that if you don't know? You need to diagnose the problem. So once you've got the problem diagnosed, then you can go in and build the efficiencies and focus and do some of those things we were talking about, lift and shift different offerings, automate and fix those problems. But if you don't fix them, it's there beneath the surface for, like you said, 12 to 18 months, and all of a sudden you're in the red and we're scrambling to figure out why. So
good stuff.
Well, unfortunately, we only have Tim for just part of the time today, but we want to give him a little bit of a platform to talk about compliance risk .io before he goes and say his goodbyes, because we love having him on. So go ahead.
Wait. Yeah. So, hey, thanks for that. Tim Golden, founder of Compliance Risk. You've seen me here week after week. Starting next week, we'll be doing
Bring in
something.
the energy.
Yeah. So starting next week, we'll be doing something a little differently. Just follow me on LinkedIn. We can catch up there. I'm off to pitch. Whoa, what is this? So for those of you that haven't been following the ConnectWise Pitch It program, Fort Mesa's part of that. We're part of that. Think of like Shark Tank, but for SaaS companies like us, right? And so, since it's supposed to be, as Sean Lardo always says, competition, vote for me, not for Matt. Kidding. Like, we are all in this together, right? The whole concept and the whole idea around the pitch it stuff is to getting emerging vendors like us into the space to help MSPs know a little bit about what we're doing, right? Yeah, Sean wants us to kind of banter back and forth and make it a competition. But the reality is, working together with partners like Fort Mesa, building these integrations together, like the ecosystem is really what I'm seeing as part of the value here, right? I wouldn't have met Fort Mesa if it wasn't for Pitch It Last cohort, where we kind of brought each other together and built out some of this stuff. So yeah, I gotta bounce. I gotta go do my, Pitch It thing, which I'm very excited about. So, follow when this one is over, go to my LinkedIn and follow me over there so you can see what I'm talking about over there.
Well, and give a quick compliancerisk.io. Give a little bit of love to what you guys do for anybody who maybe doesn't know already.
Yeah, so obviously we've always wanted to keep this kind of vendor neutral and vendor agnostic, especially from the hosts, Matt, myself, and Jesse. But thanks. I'll give a little my 2-minute elevator pitch. Compliance Risk is the only governance as a service platform specifically for MSPs. Governance as a service allows MSPs to bring a full governance lifecycle of attestation, authorization, and adoption of policies, procedures, asset management, and way more other really cool things that we're doing to help you be audit ready. Compliance Risk keeps your risk in check by getting you compliance ready.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much. It's been amazing. Good luck, and we look forward to continuing working with you.
Do I do my dance on the way out?
Oh, yeah.
Do I do my dance on the way out?
You got to tell us also your zodiac sign on your way out.
I don't know my zodiac sign. I'm born in July. My birthday's next week. So if my birthday is next week, I guess that makes me a Cancer. Great. Right?
That's a good one.
Is that the zodiac thing you're talking about? I don't know. Whatever. I don't follow that. Anyways. Tim Golden, Compliance Risk, and Vital Tech Services, our MSP. Like, follow, share, whatever, all that fun stuff. So, Matt, Thank you so much for having me. Jesse, we'll catch you on the flip side. Andrew, excited to see what's in store with Gradient, and Zach, thanks for keeping me on time and on track.
Oh yeah, man, appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Tim.
Alrighty. Before we circle back here,
sure.
We got at least one off-topic question. Should we do a little Q&A?
Yeah,
sure.
Let's take one.
Yeah.
All right. So we got Michael here.
Thank you for your question, Michael.
It's cut off a little bit, but I get this question at least once a week. Did you guys get this question at least once a week?
Oh yeah.
Maybe I'll give Jesse the first swipe on this.
So the first part, biggest question is how are security services leveraging AI to keep track of the criminals? So there are some products, endpoint products specifically, that have been doing this for some time, but it wasn't the hot topic, so you didn't hear about it. AEP and next-gen EDR tools have been doing processor level detection for ransomware. So that's one way that they can do it. They use AI to see the bytes and bits being written into the machine code at the processor level, and can detect if ransomware is being detonated on a computer and stop it. So that's one example of something that could use AI to detect criminals. And then how do you position your business to manage a lot of security product stacks, but rather focus on the threats? This is a great question. It's a balancing act. It's tough. I think it requires continuous management and monitoring on the product and ops side. So doing some of what I'll segue in here, doing some of what Gradient can offer to you to start seeing if your products are profitable, to start seeing what you're billing. But also that's one piece to the puzzle. I think the second piece is you have to have an ops program that actually reviews those things. So I think it's ops management and it's automation, a good blend of it there.
Yeah, and I think I've got basically the same thoughts here, which is operations matter, people and process matters around this stuff. The AI thing, first of all, anyone that's sticking AI like in their byline for their like threat detection product right now, as far as I'm concerned, they're all snake oil. That said, okay, the other side of that coin is every good endpoint protection product right now is using AI in some way. And the absolute best ones, they don't make a thing of it. They don't talk about it. It's a piece of their value operation right next to signature-based definitions for finding IOCs and right next to people and process actual threat analysts. So it's one tool you have in your box. But I would say AI is, while it's largely made some automated tasks a little bit simpler and more accurate, basing any type of threat management around AI is we're not in that decade yet, and I don't know when we're going to be in that decade, but we're not there now.
One thought on this as you were talking that popped up, we talk about operations. I think a pragmatic thing that I'd like to try, I haven't done this yet, but I think there's some legs on this, is now that Azure Playground, ChatGPT Playground, you can run it against your own data sets. I've had the thought, I would really like to see someone do this, and maybe there's some people doing this already smarter than me, that are, when a ticket gets closed, upload that into an Azure Blob data lake and start running ChatGPT against, and that helps some of your ops processes. So you can then go ask it questions. So instead of you having to go in and pull reports and look at reports, you can start asking questions like, hey, what are you seeing a lot of repetitive tickets on, ChatGPT? And that can start bubbling those things up to the surface for you to kind of shortcut looking at where there could be problems in your ops and managing tool stacks that are problematic. So I see that as one benefit of AI that we haven't taken advantage of yet.
Let it do the data analysis for you. You know what you want the answer to, but then you don't have to spend the time sorting.
Doing kind of the long tail stuff, right? Bringing interesting things to you to look at, so it shortens your cycles. I think that's where AI is really good.
I want to tackle the second one too.
I have a specific thought about it, if you don't mind me diving in. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm excited about it. And I want to cut it off just at the first part of the second one. How do you position your business to manage a lot of security product stacks? And I think, we always want to put the cart before the horse, and we want to have all the tools. And we alluded at the beginning of the webinar that a plumber has a lot of tools, and a carpenter is going to have a lot of tools. And I think that what makes the tool valuable isn't the tool itself, but it's the understanding and the knowledge that you have around the tool. To everybody's point in the beginning, if I've never used a hammer and then I need to use a hammer, while that one's simple and you might be able to figure it out, some people won't be able to figure out. And if you amass a spend, and if you amass a bunch of tools that don't ultimately either have value backing by knowledge, you're not really doing anything, right? You just have a lot of things. So if you want to start to be able to manage a lot of security products, you need to start with, well, what do I have on my plate right now? How good am I at it? And then where do I want to go from there? Right. And if you can answer those questions, now you have a roadmap for yourself.
Well, and so my comment is really the next step of that, of where do you go, right? And the competency needs to come first. So I'm going to use our tool as an example. One of the things we do is vulnerability management, right? There's a lot of vulnerability management products out there, but the value is not that we're finding vulnerabilities on systems. The value is when you take that tool and you package it up into an SLA for your customer, right? And that makes you focused on threats. It makes you focused on risk. And then you tell your customer, look, I'm going to intervene, this much, right? You bought this much security and you're going to get it from me, right? Mm-hmm. And you use the tools to meet that risk-based SLA. And so, there's other tools, other value lines that an MSP needs to deliver. But I think the trick to focus on risks and threat rather than security products is to create human service levels around it, and to pair that up with the products. If all you're doing is lifting and shifting SKUs, you may as well be a VAR, right? A value added reseller.
When you say human, I'm going to butcher the verbatim here, but explain to people what you mean when you say human level, right? Because, and I'd like to talk about it a little bit after you explain it.
Well, so I think Jesse could probably speak more to the economics than I can, but you don't make much by reselling other people's products, right? You make a little bit of money that way.
Right.
As an MSP, though, if you're meeting industry targets for gross margins and you're keeping your utilization on your human resources at the right level, you should be making 50% or more gross margins on that people time.
Yeah.
You're never going to make 50, 60, 70% profit by selling a product unless you're shifting it with the people managing the product, right? In a specific way. Right. And that does come from the knowledge of the tool and what it's capable of and what it delivers from a business perspective. And I know, Jesse, it's your whole business, right? To dig into those optimizations, right? Like,
yeah. So, there's a couple things I want to talk about where I see Gradient as useful here for this, because, and then maybe we could get a comment on that. But, so I talked again about going back to our discussion about showing value through showing all the line items. And I'm just gonna be a little confrontational and say, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you should show services that you're doing, but I also think you should be charging enough so that when you need to change tools out, you aren't worried about a 20 or 30% price swing on a new tool because it's a better tool. And that's where Gradient can help you with that intelligence. So we're pricing in margins effectively for our package and for our bundle, so that, let's say Huntress, raises their prices. Okay, we just took a 50% or a 30% hike on 5,000 endpoints. Well, does that hurt us? No, because we priced in our endpoint management at X amount of dollars per, anticipating that. And so I think that's where Andrew, maybe you could fill in a little bit more context there.
Yeah, and even it's funny because we could spend another hour getting into this. So this is kind of the next piece to keep your eye on the space. So we talk about all the different security tools and keeping tabs on what's going on in the business, having experts in all of these things. I think a big thing that a lot of people don't necessarily love the idea of is every single tool has some degree of an alerting function. Now, typically when they're starting out, it's going to be about an email parsing system, and you have some poor unfortunate soul in your MSP that has to monitor the master inbox and try and filter through all the noise to find the good usable data. So the other side to the coin in Gradient is we do also have an alerting module, right, to allow your vendors to directly pass a first party ticket into your PSA. And the important thing there is, you want that single source of truth. Everyone talks about a single pane of glass, and that's probably going to be your most efficient way to continue to manage all of these different tools, is if everything that is important to your endpoints, and from a security alerting, backup, you name it, goes to that single source of truth, your single pane of glass. But now you're at a point of, okay, now I'm shopping for my stack. Do I buy what's best in breed, or do I buy something that integrates with my tool stack?
Right.
And that's the other piece, to keep an eye on the space. If you haven't followed Gradient on LinkedIn yet, jump on there. But yeah, keep an eye on the space, because we do have the alerting module today, and there's some exciting stuff coming down the pipe.
Yeah. Well, and actually actionable data alerts.
Well, and Jesse, you and I will have to talk offline about this, because so Fort Mesa, we didn't discuss it on this call and it hasn't been announced, but we've been building out our Gradient integration, and we're doing both the billing module and the alerts module. So I've had a chance to really understand the value, and that's what really, like, we were halfway through the process before I realized, wait, this is a bigger problem space for our partners than I thought it was. And of course, then I go and talk to them, and they inform me about all the things I didn't know about billing nightmares. But so I've been working through this. We're going to be launching our billing and alerts integration in mid-July, and there'll be an announcement forthcoming on that. But we're really excited to be able to offer this to our partners. And we've had the ability to send alerts to some PSAs in a tightly coupled fashion, and we've got email alerts with some others. But really, the Gradient integration allows a really tight, universal cross-mapping that it really just makes the targeting, the alerts, the actionable alerts to the correct customer queue, really at an optimized next level fashion. So that's exciting for us.
It's awesome.
Yeah, we're super excited to have that partnership take off here. And said we weren't going to spill all the beans, but yeah, everyone can follow Fortnite, follow Gradient. There's going to be some exciting stuff here in the next few weeks.
You guys got anything to add before we sign off here? I got a question for you, Jesse. So you're out doing the T-posts, right?
Right.
Do you use stamped or do you use poured iron? And do you use the pounder or do you get out there with like the rocks and hammers?
I use whatever Menards has in stock. And it's funny. I actually made the comment to my wife. We were out there doing it. I go, this T-post, if I didn't have this pounder, if they hadn't invented this thing, I would be out here with sore hands and been through about 3 sliders right now. So we could look at the T-post pounder as the gradient of the of the garden.
Yeah, I did that a couple of times without the post pounder. And,
it's brutal. It's brutal. Yeah.
All right.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on, and Jesse, as always, you're fantastic.
Thanks
Can I ask you a question? Is that background real, and is the dog that gets on the bed sometimes real?
Because it's real. Yes.
It's so crisp that sometimes I think it's like but then I saw the dog one time and I was like, he's either so high tech that he's got it running, or
lighting's perfect.
Yeah, I was like, man, I'm not sure. But anyway, cool. So thank you for being on, and Andrew, thank you as well.
Sony ZV. Yeah, I think Sony ZV-E10 is the camera I use. I think that's what it's called. Or
I'm jealous.
Z10, yeah, it's whatever. Yeah,
they're probably going to send you 8 or 9 of them now.
I have discount Acer webcam.
Okay, I heard good things about that one too. All right,
guys.
Thank you for everybody for tuning in, and everybody for helping make some great content today.
You bet.
Liz, you want to cue us out?